Welcome to Founding Up's Uncharted Your Sidekick for Life. In Season 3, Episode 4, we're joined by Marcus Metzger, Executive Director of HICAM, the Hayes Innovation Center for Advanced Manufacturing. Today, we're exploring the realms of innovation, creation, and entrepreneurship. Marcus's journey exemplifies the boundless nature of creation, from childhood fort building and coding websites to large-scale interactive art and co-founding creative spaces like Futurespace NYC. Thank you to our Gen Z contributor this episode, Gabriel, who brings up concerns about global sustainability and the impact of AI on supply chains. If you're ready to transform passion into purpose and ideas into reality, this episode's for you. Let's get started.
Welcome to Founding Up's Uncharted Your Sidekick for Life. Season 3, Episode 4. Natalie, welcome back.
Thank
We missed you.
I missed y'all last week, yesterday.
So, why don't we start with intros and then talk about this special guest that we've got today.
To the third degree.
Extra.
Love it.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. I'm Natalie Payton. I'm an actor, comedian, and podcast person, Natalie, and co-host of Uncharted.
I love the wave. Neo.
I am Neo.
Don't forget to wave to the camera. Because
Hi,
It was a
Greg.
lot of pressure on me yesterday. I had to go first. I wasn't ready.
he's like, wires crossed.
Words.
I am podcast personality. No, I'm Leon.
So we only did it 7 times. Hello everyone. I am Dr. Leon Vanstone, rocket scientist, storyteller, idiot, co-host of Uncharted, co-founder of Founding Up, among many other things.
And dad of an amazing...
That was
2
covered
years old?
among my many other things. Yes, he is
2-year-old?
2 and change at the moment.
Keeps you on your
2 and
toes.
3. He keeps me up. And sometimes on my toes, yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm Dan Dillard, also co-host of this amazing show. We have some great guests on. And co-founder of Founding Up, among other things that we don't get into. There's all these grays.
We get into it
But we'll get
throughout
into it throughout
episode.
the episodes. And today, we have Marcus in the house.
Yay!
Yeah, my name is Marcus Metzger. I am the executive director of HICAM, which is the Hayes Innovation Center for Advanced Manufacturing. And I'm somebody who builds things. That is the thing that I'm really passionate about, is the materialization of objects, and in this case, the materialization of a building and a new facility and a place for people to learn. So I'm happy to be here with you.
Such cool stuff that we're going to get into.
That's super cool.
You're doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I want to break down the name of the...
the Hayes Innovation Center for Advanced
Is that the
Manufacturing.
location?
It's HICAM.
Yeah.
So we just call it HICAM colloquially.
Yeah.
And so you mean by Hayes, you mean Hayes County?
Hayes County?
It is not,
Okay.
actually. It's named after Warren Hayes.
Okay.
And Warren Hayes is a person that was very near and dear to me. He was a mentor. He was he was my cousin-uncle. He was a cousin, but
Love
he was
it.
in relationship an uncle.
Sure.
And he was somebody
I have
who was
one of
really
those.
yeah, the cousin-uncle.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mine's a cousin.
A cousin,
Yeah.
yep. And so Warren Hayes, who was kind of a pioneer in the modular building,
Mhm.
world, and he guided me on, throughout my entrepreneur, growing up as an entrepreneur, and he unfortunately passed from
Sorry.
brain cancer.
Ugh.
And so in his honor, we named it the Hayes Innovation and Center for Advanced Manufacturing. Well, that kind of, explains itself.
Cool. Yeah, it does. Thank you.
What fascinates me about your story, and we'll get into it, is just the creation and the innovation. So we've talked a lot about, and
Not the innovation of the creation.
no, the other way.
That was boring.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's got to be in alphabetical order. So, but what's fun about this, and kind of what I want audience to take away from this, is freedom to create.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I really, really enjoy about your story. I want to extract that because we've talked about this before. Often we feel like we're in a box in society. Like you go to high school, you go to college, you do this thing, get a job, and so on and so forth. And it's the mentors in your life that kind of help you think outside the box and go, the world is really just open for you to go create. And your life really exemplifies that, just because you had so much artistry and innovation. And so I want to get into some of that. So why don't we start, and we do this with every guest, let's start from the beginning, because I just want people to connect with you from the very, kind of 15, 16, in your teens, what you wanted to be and what drew you, what was calling you.
Or that first moment you were like, I want to be this, what was that?
Yeah. Okay. So in the beginning. Okay.
God created it.
Yes. There was this apple, and I grabbed an apple. But for the fruit of knowledge. No. So I was a very activated kid, and I was somebody. I would go outside. My parents would never know where I was. I would be out in the woods building a fort, pretending. In fact, where we grew up, there was a housing development like the next community over. So me and my friends would ride our bikes with a little like trailer pulled behind it, which was the what were those red wagons?
Radio flyers.
Yeah, radio flyers. Yeah. I had a radio flyer and a type bike, those. And we would go to the construction site and we would pilfer the detritus from there, and we'd be like, oh, cool, construction stuff. And I remember going into the garage, and my dad had like a big workshop. And something that I'm really thankful for my dad is he was really good at kind of cultivating curiosity. Yeah. And so, there was never a toy would not stay broken for long. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, he would always do that, and I'd always just kind of be over his shoulder. And that really empowered me from a young age to feel like, okay, cool, I can make things. I can fix things. I can take things apart, In fact, I took a lot more things apart than I was able to put back together.
Yeah. But that's how you discover.
That's exploration.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you figure it out. And, every once in a while, I'd be like, I really broke it, And so building forts was really interesting to me. And at our house, we were the first house that had a computer on the block. Because, I'm old enough to remember like when you didn't have a computer and then you did have a computer.
Yeah. And was it the Commodore 64?
Ooh, I'm not quite as old as you.
That was my first computer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I remember the first computer in my dad's office was a Gateway 486 DX2.
Oh, we had a Gateway.
Yeah. It was like a massive tower. It got hot. It was wild. And then Windows 95 came out. And when Windows 95 came out, I got the old computer, which had Windows 3.1 in my bedroom.
3.1.
Yeah. Yeah, which is really interesting. And, I'm actually seeing a lot of parallels with what's happening with the development of AI and like these tools coming online. Like, I feel like we're in the Windows 3.1 era of that new technology. But anyway, so I really got interested in computers, and I built my first website when I was probably like 12, and it was a website teasing another kid who was my friend, but you have to tease your friends. And
like
so
the blank check website.
Yeah, exactly. And so I got really interested in that. We did a thing called Internet Relay Chat. It was like where you could go to like an IRC. You could go there. You could chat with people.
What's IRC? Oh,
it was
Internet
like
Relay Chat.
Internet Relay Chat.
The very early days of peer-driven internet chat. Yeah. Before there was MSN Messenger.
Right.
In real life.
Yeah.
In real chat.
In real chat.
Exactly. And I used to do prank phone calls on there, and you would you'd go on the chat and somebody would give you someone's phone number.
Yeah.
You would call them and, play a prank. So I was really activated with these things. I was kind of balancing, being indoors on a computer, being outdoors and building things. I got, interested in programming. I got interested in, C++. That was like the first thing that I was exposed to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's like it's object-oriented programming. Who's down with OOP? And so I'm doing this, and I also, I was really involved in science. I was a really nerdy kid. I'm on the math team. I'm on the Latin team.
Love it.
Like these are not what
Solve
cool kids do. Yeah. And I would say that, popularity was not in my future at all. And a real kind of pivotal moment for me was the state science fair. And so I built a testing device called the ballistic accelerator.
Okay.
And
It's a catapult, isn't it?
yeah, you know what it
Or
is?
a trebuchet, perhaps.
I love and respect the trebuchet. This was a glorified marble jump. And so it was basically, I'd like built this tube, and what I did was, I tested different angles on the exit. I created a little spring-loaded device so that I could, remove the variability of the drop
Dropping
height.
it.
Yep.
All right.
And I went to, and this was in San Antonio, and I went to the local.
And how old are you at
ball
this
bearing.
point?
I am 13
Okay.
years old. And I went and I got a ball bearing of every size. I went to the ball bearing factory and was like, can I have a ball bearing of every size so that I can like test my hypothesis. And then, so you made this thing, you dropped it, and then you tested different weights and sizes of ball bearings. And then I put a piece of graph paper out, and I put
Just
a
like,
piece
is
of
this you
carbon
just
paper.
proving the Suvat equations, basically?
Yeah. And I wanted to know if it's heavier, does it go farther?
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that, and I made the whole like display, and I won, and I got to the state science fair.
Cool.
And
And then there's the kid with the Tesla coil, and you're just like, God.
I wanted to be friends. I wanted to be that person. And so that really that was like my first thing where I think I received a lot of external validation for having made something. And so that was really powerful. And I got an opportunity from there to go to a special school, a special program. And it was to go to University of North Texas, and you would spend your last 2 years of high school learning computer science.
Wow.
And at a university. So you would get like your first 2 years of college.
Sure.
And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And so I went and told my friends, and I was like, guys, check it out. I'm going to go to this thing. And they were like, oh, but then you would leave us, and you wouldn't, we wouldn't be here. And I was like, oh, I don't want to leave my friends. And I decided not to go because because of the peer pressure of that. And looking back, that was a pivotal moment, And so like, I felt like, oh man, I really have to stay with my friends. And I didn't listen to what was, inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stayed back.
I love that you say that, because that happens to everyone. Everyone's got these choices, and sometimes it is the peer pressure that you succumb to, but there is a voice inside you that wants to do something. And so it's that pivotal moment of like, what am I going to do?
But it's the same thing, right? Who gives you permission? It's like when if you're going to go build something, whatever it is, right? Who gives you permission to get on a lathe when you don't know how to use it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, lathe's a bad example because you could lose a hand, but you know what I mean, right? Who gives you permission to buy a 3D printer when you don't know how it works? Who gives you permission to start a company when you don't know how to start? Like how do you find that? And it can be hard, as you say, because you're like, your friends are all around you and they don't want you, whether it's like in your garage at night, tinkering with things, or working late, or just don't want you to leave, and you like them, you don't want to leave either. It's tough.
Exactly. And and especially at that, when you're a teenager,
right.
your relationships to your friends, like
they're very informative.
Yeah, exactly.
The collective wisdom.
Yeah, definitely. And you're starting to find yourself, and we begin to define ourselves in relation to the things and the people around us. It's the process that we go through. And so I chose not to listen to what was inside of me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And it ended up that I became less engaged with school as a result of that. And so my last, my junior and senior year of high school, I started, participating less. Oh, well, I'm not going to go to the, I'm not going to go do all these extracurricular things.
Was that because I'm curious, as I imagine this, was that because like you then saw your current path as less than what you are?
Yeah, or it was, I think, I'm going to call it, conforming to the mean, right? So like here I am doing, but before I noticed that other people around me weren't doing all of the things that I was doing, like I'd be curious about something. So I'd go over there. And then I think that was the point in time where I noticed like, oh, most people don't do that. Most people, are just kind of.
You started editing yourself.
So I started editing myself. Exactly. And, the result of that is I dropped out of high school and I got a GED. In fact, I remember when I forget, which teacher or which person I was talking to was, they were understanding that I was being less engaged in school, and they kind of saw the disengagement. I was angsty, and they told me like, well, you can just take a test and get out of school, and I was like, what?
Shortcut?
Say what now?
There's a shortcut, and I can be done with this, and the teachers, and everybody that was
100%.
so annoying, and so I went and took a test like that week or whenever it was, and that was done, and I was like, whoa, and I moved to Austin. So I'm living in San Antonio at this time with my dad. And
you're like 17 now or something?
I'm like 17, exactly. And, at this time, by the way, you had to do things for money. So I got my first job when I was probably about 16, working for Best Buy.
Sure.
Selling computers there.
I was going to say, were you selling or fixing? Because
I was
you could have
selling.
been what's the Best
Geek
Buy one?
Squad.
Geek Squad.
The Geek Squad. Yeah, this was actually pre-Geek Squad.
Wow.
But
Geeky before it was cool. Literally.
Yeah. But I really interested in computers. So like I spent all my time there. But I also, I would also go around to all the neighbors. Like I had a little bit of an entrepreneurial streak. So like I always, was like, hey, can I wash your cars? I made a flyer, and, I went and got in the practice of, meeting with people and being like, do you guys want to hire me? I can do all of these things. And I had
You were like a
list.
task rabbit.
Yeah, I was like a task rabbit before that was a thing.
Yeah.
And so at 17, I moved to Austin to go move in with my mom, and I was like, I'm gonna, figure it out. And so I took some time to, just be a kid, be an 18-year-old. And, at this point now, I'm feeling pretty low about my opportunities in the world. Right. Like I had visions of going to Stanford for computer science, and now I'm like, oh well, I'm just a high school dropout. Like, how's this going to be for me? I can't go apply to those places. And I learned about Austin Community College, and I was like, okay, well they'll take me there.
Which rocks, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea.
Shout out to those badasses.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because, and the messages that I heard growing up were that community colleges were not
It's what everybody
serious
heard.
places.
Right.
Right.
Unfortunately, but it is like so superb.
Yeah.
That's what Stanford wants you to think.
That's what exactly
Yeah.
big. Yeah. I was listening
Big
to
university.
Big Uni.
Big uni, yeah.
Yeah. And so I went to Austin Community College, and what I found there was a group of people that were really interested in helping me and helping all the other students. They were passionate about education, and they recultivated, for me that sense of like, okay, I can do this. I can teach myself. And so I went there, and I got accepted to University of Texas. And so I'm like, okay. And, at that point, I still don't know what I want to do. I still don't know, who I am. I go to school for economics. I'm like, okay, economics, that's like money. Like this has got to go somewhere good, I assumed. And it was so freaking boring. It was
Somebody who works with their hands.
I know.
Like,
Oh,
yeah.
I know. Like, yeah, like
You're telling me that the intricacies of macroeconomics didn't speak to you?
I just didn't understand how you could be so focused on the numbers that you miss the human experience.
Oh,
Like that actually seems like the norm in my experience.
Yeah. It confused me. So I went there and I was participating in this. But you could do extracurriculars, and for as you well know, the University of Texas has a great astronomy program there. And so that was like the science that I went and took was astronomy. And I was like, whoa, space is really freaking cool. So I got excited about that. I got excited about physics. I started learning more about, the material world. And at this point,
this is leading us to a Death Star story.
Yes, this is totally leading to a Death Star story. So I have this background knowledge of computers and programming and website stuff. I have this foreground knowledge. Okay, physics is interesting. Space is interesting. And I'm also, in my early 20s. So it's like, we're like 22, 23. And I started going out to parties, right? And parties were cool. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll throw events, and then we'll do the thing. And
that's how you make sure you're always invited.
That's how exactly. And it was a chance to, get on stage, and I used to like to MC, I'd get to put on like,
fun.
Fun outfits. And so this cultivated, this interest in performance art, and in general, an early exposure to the art scene, of which I had no exposure. Like I had no art history. My parents were kind of technical people, and I got involved in going to art festivals. So this started with one in Austin, which is called Art Outside, which was like really cool. They had like stages, and they had, big sculptures there. Yep. And as a young person, I got to like, wow, I could actually participate. I volunteered. I got to build things. I got to like put my hands on stuff and also do it as a team. And, you get involved in this like group dynamic. And so that lit me up. And, that was, it felt like a wind like blowing on the ember inside of my heart. It was like starting to cultivate a fire.
That. Yeah.
And so that was when I first took notice. I was like, oh, okay, this makes me feel like alive.
Yeah.
And I got so, wrapped up in, what I would call pulling on the thread of passion that I walked away from the university. I was like, okay, I'm going to go do this. Like, screw economics. That's boring spreadsheet stuff. Little did I know you can actually be really creative with spreadsheets. This would come back later.
Yeah.
And so
yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
I love functions on spreadsheets.
Yes.
Well, and just to comment on that, I've got a background in financial planning, and also I was looking at being an accountant and finance. And I was always attracted to the CNBC channel, and like I always wanted to understand that. So it was just an intrigue. It's like a puzzle for me. And what I found is when I went and took the CPA class, I felt what you did for economics. I'm like, man, this is so boring because it's just entries, and it was just not creative for me. But you go into finance, and it's really creative. Like people are creating products all the time as far as that kind of stuff. And so that did kind of scratch the itch for my creativity for that period of time, but it wasn't like forever. It was just kind of like, it was purposeful, but I totally understand what you mean by not at all pulling anything for you and then something that changes it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, just to kind of rally off of that, what I didn't understand when I was going through the economics classes was that, okay, so like these are like economic models, and they're trying to describe something, about what is. And what I came to know and understand later was you can use those same tools to help visualize and bring about what ought to be. And so I think that that's kind of that difference, right? The CPA is accounting for what
has happened.
And in the financial models, you're, projecting what could or ought to be.
That's an interesting
To tie into the entrepreneurship world, because you're looking at, and that was kind of my first taste at entrepreneurism, is because you are looking at products that are, here's what we think is going to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah. And at some point in time, so I'm in the.
How old are you now? Just
how old are you now? Yeah, where are we in the story?
Like 23.
I'm 25 at this point. Okay, so I'm
and you've
dropped out.
You've dropped out of UT.
Yeah, with one semester to go. Yes,
Sure.
of my economics degree. And I went to Burning Man.
That was my next question.
Naturally.
So then you go to Burning Man.
And
what did you build?
Okay, so when I went to Burning Man for the first time, I got to go be a part of this
Art car.
There was an art car, but the project that I was there helping was this like massive like pyramid like art installation there.
Cool. What year is this?
This is, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to like go back like 2009, 2010, something like that. It's some time ago.
Sure.
And yeah, so I'm engaged. I'm going to these things. I'm into the art, and at some point in time, we are working on a project, and someone says, "Hey, the guy that was supposed to build this, they dropped out, and we need to build this on a CNC." And I was like, "What's a CNC?" I had no idea. And I went with my friend to this place that was in Round Rock called Tech Shop, and it was a maker space.
Is that like a fab shop?
Yeah, a maker space. A maker space is, they have a bunch of tools like 3D printers and laser cutters and some computers that you can do design on.
Cool.
And
basically a bunch of computer controlled tools.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And they showed me what a CNC was, which, the implication of a CNC is you can design something on a computer, and then you can use this big tool and you put a sheet of plywood down, and it cuts the plywood into whatever shape that you drew on the computer.
That's cool.
And like that short-circuited something in my brain. I was like,
What?
Like, I can just think of something and I can sketch it, and then I can make it a real thing. And I got obsessed. Like, I just was like, I want to pour, and I think around this time I'd maybe read like Malcolm Gladwell, Tipping Point. So I knew that you needed to put 10,000 hours. And I was like, okay, how quickly can I get 10,000 hours on this? And so I got obsessed. I'm like,
how quickly can I put 10,000 hours? What about 10,000 hours?
Yeah, it'll take about 10,000 hours. And one of the great things about art projects is that when you're doing something that's passionful, you want to maximize the engagement on it. You're not like sitting here thinking like, okay, it's 5, I'm ready to do it.
Right.
You're like, wow, it's 5 a.m. and I actually have to go to sleep.
Yeah.
So it really drew that out of me. And there was a guy that was like running the shop there. And so you talk about the mentor things. This was a person that, something that I think that he did really well as far as exposing me and all the other, people that were interested in coming into the space, was he didn't do the work for you. He let you know about concepts, and then he kind of let you get to your sticking point. Yeah. You got to figure it out. Some of those 10,000 hours are hard hours, and you have to like really kind of chew it up. And if you run the simulation forward a little bit, and now I'm like 28, and I've been working on art projects now, and I've been actually able to build them, and so this has exposed me now to more people. I'm becoming more invested and connected.
Is that how you're surviving financially as well?
Yeah, I was surviving financially by having 6 roommates and
living like very low cost.
Yeah, living low cost. Bartending.
Sure.
Doing service jobs.
Sure.
And spending like every hour that I possibly could developing my toolkit, learning to be a better designer. I completely self-taught how to do like vector illustration, how to do 3D design, and then I, for better or worse, I like all I would do is I would think of something I wanted to make, and then I would try to see what tools like you would need to do that, and then I would try to like add those tools to my toolkit.
Right.
I don't necessarily recommend this as a pedagogy, but it's what worked for me.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of folks, you'd call it like autodidactic, right? Which is like teaching yourself to do things. And I think that's actually a really important concept, because I think we all have a responsibility to be our first teacher.
Right.
And teachers that we experience out in the world,
because only you are the one that knows what you want to learn.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, you got to start somewhere, and it's like, let me find this up, and then to get better and better, education path but you start with yourself.
Exactly. And so I view a role of a really good teacher as somebody who illuminates things that you may want to consider as you go through the process of teaching yourself.
Right.
These things.
Yeah.
The phrase I've always enjoyed is light the fire, don't fill the pot. Right.
Light the fire, don't fill the pot.
Yeah. The role of education is not to fill some vessel up with some amount of knowledge. It's to inspire someone to care about something and then let them teach themselves.
Yeah.
And hopefully give them the tools to do so.
Yes. That resonates. Yeah, that definitely resonates. And so I would say from that point on,
this is where it gets exciting.
I became.
I've been on the edge of my seat this whole time. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Is this the part where you moved to New York?
Yeah, this is the part where I moved to New York. So I have a friend there. He's in the motion graphics world. So this means, he's a designer that does 3D animation, and he works for commercial animation studios in New York. And he had a really cool style. His name was Gabriel Polesio from Colombia.
From Colombia.
Yeah. And he says, Marcus, why you not move to New York? And I was like, man, you're right. I should do that. And
it's that peer pressure kicking in again.
It's that freaking peer pressure, but he was right. And so I moved to New York.
Now you have 10 roommates.
Now what year is it?
Yeah. So now this is like 2013.
Okay, so we were there at the same time.
And how old are you now?
I'm 28.
Okay, right.
28 or so.
Life's a journey, folks.
Yes, exactly. And so I moved there. I have 4 roommates at this point, and I share a studio space with Gabriel. And he has a laser cutter, and I went and bought a ShopBot, which is like a CNC machine that you can put together yourself. It's like a thing, and so and we open a studio, and it's Gabriel and Marcus. It's Gamma. And so we were Gamma NYC. And at this point, I had enough clarity to know that interactive installation art was like the thing. Like that just lit my fire big time. So I moved to New York. I moved to Brooklyn. We opened a studio, and we're like, great, we're open for business. And the phone doesn't ring.
Build it, and they will come. Damn it.
Okay, we're ready. And the first lesson was, whatever you do and whatever you apply energy towards, you will get more of. Like whatever you say yes to, more of that will show up. Whatever you say no to, less of that will show up. So how that manifested is we built our first interactive piece of art, right?
In the studio,
right? We were like, we don't have a client, nobody's hiring us. So let's
just build something.
Let's build something. And we built this installation, and it was like a 360 degree made out of acrylic, had this like really faceted design, and it had projectors inside of it. It had 3 like little micro pico projectors. And because Gabriel was an animator, there was a design, he animated it. And then there was little, we used Kinect cameras.
Yeah.
to
The
trigger.
dot matrices.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody, like when somebody walked by, it would trigger an animation, right? And then at the time, we were like, man, it needs to sound like something. And somebody was like, hey, there's an art gallery having a little show, down the way. We should go check it out. And this was one of those happenstance things. So we go to this art show at midnight, and there's like this sound installation in there, and it was the coolest thing. And it was it got the least amount of attention of everything in the show, but we waited around, and there was two guys there named Dave and Gabe. And this was their interactive sound installation.
Daga, no.
Yeah. DaveandGabe.care was their website. But anyways, they were really sweet guys, and we were like, hey, we're building this thing. We want it to sound like something. Will you guys come and, just design some audio component? And so we all ended up collaborating on it. We built this thing. We sent it to, there was an event, a motion graphics industry event. So we put it there, and it got a great reception. And so that was the thing that people started calling us off of. They were like, oh, they saw that, and we started to cultivate what would become not only our first client relationships, but also partnerships.
Wow.
So from there, for the first year after that, we started getting our first, client gigs, our first fabrication jobs. So this is like people calling us and saying, hey, I have an idea. Can you build it? Can you design it? And do design for manufacture. And and I've always had this is a special gift of mine. I'm really good at walking into a situation and just holding a look on my face that I know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's kind of
With
like
conviction.
yeah, resting conviction face. Yeah, so that really worked in this environment. And at some point after this year, I now have a group of people that I really like. I have new friends there. They're all interested in making stuff and building stuff. And we're starting to get gigs that are physically larger than the room that we're in. We're in a 20 by 20, like the size of the room that we're in right now. Imagine having a CNC and a laser cutter, and you're trying to build something, and you're trying to design. It was tight. Absolutely crazy, very tight. And so I called a meeting. I brought 10 people to the meeting, and we had a conversation about maybe getting a studio together. Hey, we should, you guys all have a business. I have a business. Let's discuss what we would want in a studio together. And we needed to make a Slack channel so that we could share links. And we wanted to talk about our future space that we were going to get. And we were like, dang, Future Space. That's a good name. And what that blossomed into was a 15,000 square foot creative technology incubator, manufacturing space, design space. And it was, a bunch of different companies in there just making it happen. And
where was this located?
This was in Bushwick.
Bushwick, I knew it.
Yes.
Are you familiar with
How did you know
Because I feel like my cousin has worked there.
Okay. Who's your cousin?
Tex Jernigan. He does installation sculpture art out of Bushwick. But are you familiar with the factory?
Yes.
Okay.
Factory
so
NYC.
I'm friends with the guys that run that shop, and they had a birthday party on the roof, and it was races, but they kitted out those little kid cars, tight cars with the motors, and they put real motors on them. And they made a track, and so that was a really fun birthday party. It's fun to go to
racist. I'm like,
Yeah, that's what I had too. I was
races.
where do you go with this?
Car races.
Yes. Once you started car engine. Oh,
Yeah, I got it. I was like,
So that's cool.
we might have to edit this out. I don't know.
Fix it in post.
Futures NYC.
Yeah, Future Space, exactly.
Future Space, sorry.
Real quick, because I know we're fascinating story. I'm like, oh, we already 45 minutes in. But I want to talk about two things. Let's jump into the what was it called? The Death Star.
Okay, sure.
And then we'll take a question.
Okay.
A couple questions.
Great, cool. Yeah. Bring it on home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Future Space.
So to kind of fast forward maybe a little bit.
I like what you said earlier, taking the simulation forward.
Yeah, we're gonna run the simulation forward a little bit. At this point, I'm later in my career. I now am a pretty good, if I say so myself, fabricator. And people tend to call me for challenging projects and challenging things. And I'm working now with somebody who is one of the world's best robotics experts. And, this is all in the digital fabrication world. And so this is I'm just super excited. And we're working on a project, and it's a project called the Death Star. And in order to build the Death Star, it's this 6-foot sphere. And in this sphere, and it's made out of aluminum. And so spheres are really hard shapes to make, especially at that scale. Mm-hmm. So we went to a casting facility and they screwed it up, and we are under deadline pressure. And the one thing you absolutely cannot do in New York City is mess up a deadline. Mm-hmm. And so this opportunity, this problem turned opportunity, resulted in Costas taking a welder and putting it on one of the robot arms, and it was oh, and it started 3D printing with metal and growing. Yes, exactly. And turning it into a half a sphere. Okay. Well, it took us 4 weeks to make a half a sphere. It took us 2 weeks to make the next half a sphere, and you put them together. And then you carve it.
Sand that down.
You carve it, and then you polish it with the robot. And then you drill 40,000 holes.
Naturally.
Around it.
Wow.
And then for the purposes of this project, you pressed 40,000 bullets. 7.62 bullets, and then you screw
live
them.
Ammo?
No, not live ammo. You
That's
press
spicy.
them.
All right, yeah.
That would be really spicy. These were just the shells, the cartridge, and then you screw it, and then it resulted in this finished piece, and that went out to Art Basel, and for a very well-known client. Yeah, the Death Star.
Literally. You should have left them in, and then it really would be the Death Star. You're like one small internal explosion.
You're not.
Who gets the credit for that? The artist or the
absolutely.
designer?
Sure. That's, this is an artist piece. We are but humble fabricators, right? Facilitating.
But you came up
design.
with the concept of how to do it.
Sure. But that's in the sphere of design for manufacture.
Okay.
And that's not what makes headlines.
Sure.
It's the end result, and and that's how the art industry
kind of like
works.
the crew of a film set, they make it happen, but they don't get all the credit.
You might make the credits, but you're not the producer.
Right.
Yeah, and I would even say that the art fabrication world, especially at the high end, is deeply uncredited.
I would guess, because you don't hear about them. You hear about the Ai Weiweis, but you don't hear about who put it together.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or Olafur Eliasson, or any of the.
These are names that, you can just hear those names and understand that that's like a brand.
Right.
And, beneath that brand are many creatives that have varying talents, and those get combined to deliver a project.
Got it.
And that's how the art world works.
Let's take the simulation to today, because I want to touch on more about what HICAM is and what it's becoming and all of that, so that we'll give that a couple of minutes, and then we'll take a question, and then we'll wrap up.
Sounds great. And so all of those experiences informed a certain disposition that I have towards enabling people to make things. And when I came back to Austin during COVID times, I came here to take care of my aging mother, who was ill. And I had a conversation with a gentleman who is an economist. And
always circles back.
Right?
It always circles back. And I was explaining to him the exact story that I told you. And he said, fateful words, he says, would you ever consider doing something like this here? And by the way, this conversation's happening at Warren Hayes's. And so that led to the kind of consolidation of the last 10 years of thoughts that I've had into what would become HICAM. And I'm eternally grateful to John Hawkins, the economist, who helped me understand, okay, here's how you can take those ideas and here's how you can begin to put them in the boxes that folks that check boxes look for. And so I've been getting what I, jokingly call my PhD in bureaucracy and understanding like these really creative things. Okay, well, how can you use the language of economics, economic development to explain to board members and to, interested parties how an investment that they can make into a program and how that can translate into real results and opportunities for growth and for knowledge, and to help create an environment that for young people, they can come to and they can learn about robotics and they can have the fire lit and not their pot filled.
And that's what I love about this story, is that literally creating out of nothing, right? As entrepreneurs, as people do in this mindset, it's like you're like, here's an idea, and it becomes something, whether it's starting back when you were a kid and pulling the construction stuff together and building stuff, but that over time, as the simulation goes forward, has turned into, now you're creating building and working with the city and working with the different boards and actually getting grant money and doing all the things that you need to do to make this a enormous place that now is going to be a facility for creators.
Yeah. It's really exciting.
And I love that story because everyone that's listening can do exactly, like, we all have that power to do that. And I love the humbleness of your story. That's why I wanted to capture the entire story. It's like, I went this way, I didn't listen to this, I went and got my GED, I felt this way. Like, all of us have these feelings as we go, but throughout life, when you look back, like, oh, that's why I studied economics and didn't like it, but now I understand why I needed to do that. You look back and you can kind of draw a line from one thing to another as to why you're here.
Oh, totally. The connect the dots always makes sense after the dots are connected.
Right.
It doesn't make sense beforehand. And, I think you're so right on. And it's one of the things that I really love about this podcast and the platform that you guys put out there. And that's the opportunity for people to hear actual stories of, because like when we go on social media, like that just tells you
Hear
like
Hermosi.
it's just, all you see is the picture of victory at the end.
Right.
And what you don't see is
The
the marathon, the doubt, the blisters that had to go along there to get to that.
Yeah. And that we're all the same, and every one of us has that fire, and so we're going to find it.
Yeah.
And then pursue it, and then light it, and light the fire. And I like how you said, blow air on the embers and get it going.
Exactly.
All right, let's take a question.
Please.
Yeah. This one's going to talk about AI and global. His name is Gabriel.
Gabriel.
Gabriel. Talking about global supply chain. So I have not heard this one before. Let's go with this.
Earth can sustain 15 billion people properly right now with the amount of resources and everything that we have there. Like, we face a supply chain issue with the world. It's not necessarily anything else where every person could be fed, clothed, housing, all of that with 15 billion people, and we still haven't figured it out with the current population that we have now. So then how does AI play into that, right? Are we going to create more of a gap and disparity? Or are we going to, be able to bridge those gaps and mend those fences and be able to establish more prosperity for individuals? Then the choice is really up to us in that regard.
Interesting. Food for thoughts.
So, here's some of the thoughts of our younger Gen Z and things that, when they look at the world, these are some of the concerns. And here's population. It's like we're at 8 billion now. How do we get to 50 billion? Can the earth sustain it? So there's some deep, these are not things I thought about when I was that age. And a lot of it, I think, is because, and we've talked about this before, you do have the social media in your lap, and it's like throwing all the world's problems and maybe not even current problems, but imagined problems on your lap. And so this is not something that obviously we're experts at, but at the end of the day, like the question is the same, so the concerns are the same. Like these are some things that people are thinking about. So how do we answer that? How would we feel about that?
I would say start with yourself. Like personally, I don't participate in fast fashion. So most of my clothes are thrifted or hand-me-downs because there's, tons of excess clothes and waste and et cetera, et cetera. And just taking care of your side of the street, so to speak, like recycling and doing all the things that you can contribute to making the earth and the world a better place. There's these new diapers coming out created by the woman that founded the company Tushy, and they're called Hero diapers, but they come with a little plastic-eating mushroom pellet, and you put the pellet in, and the mushroom starts eating the plastic, and then it'll be put into landfills, and that'll start eating the landfills in the ocean, the plastic in the ocean. So I'm not a mother yet, but when I do become a mother, those are the diapers that I'll be buying, because diapers take the longest to decompose of anything practically. So just start with yourself.
I did not know that at all. But I like where your mind went immediately. It was like, yeah, the population and the issues of society. And I guess I look at, every generation builds something different, but the next generation is like, okay, how do we either undo it or fix it or make it better? And that's what we're talking about now, is these things have been built. And we've had that. I mean, you had, smoking was a big thing, and you have now food is a big thing. So you have to dive into how things are built and figure out creatively, how do you do it better? And so I think that's a great answer, is to figure out what can you do on a scale. And then as you're on podcasts or on anything, you can educate and make that awareness. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with some of that. Start with yourself. That always helps. On this particular issue, there is a problem, right? That a lot of the whole idea of like a carbon budget or something was the amount of resources used personally in comparison to something like large industry is shriveling. And so, yes, of course, you can turn the lights off when you leave the room, and you can try not to drive your car. But if you fundamentally don't change the systems and the industries and the institutions around you, it won't make any difference. So yes, keep a tidy house. Sure, that helps. But the vast majority of it's going to be done with speaking with your wallet and applying pressure to your politicians. You're going to have to see large systematic change in a lot of these industries. Food waste is an enormous problem. Speaking of feeding people, global warming is another strong, or climate change is another strong pressure. Although again, like,
but I do think you're onto something. It is this, and we always dog on social media just because of what we've seen those effects. But the positive side of that is that you can get more collective and your voices can be heard. I recently saw some things where, based on food, it's like 400,000 people have signed behind one of the influencers. I forget her name, but she was speaking direct, and I've seen a few of these speaking to Kellogg brand and saying, hey, we in the US, we want the same cereal that goes to Europe, because the one in Europe is much, much safer for us. And so, and having 400,000 signatures behind it, and having these talking to industry, because that's how you make change. And today, the power of social media, positive
and
side
ultimately, the easier way to do that would be to apply enough pressure to a few brands to get them to change, and then get to America to change the way it certifies food,
Right.
so that American rules just say this is not food unless it's like Europe or
Right.
anywhere else.
Right.
But it's a good start.
Yeah. So love that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with the personal responsibility, because that ties up to your own personal ethics that you bring to the world, and like, believe me, those are important things. The thing that came to my mind when you're talking about like the current carrying capacity of the entire world, 8 billion now versus, he's talking about 50 billion. In my view, the current system and configuration and the way that we apply and use energy in the whole system is not scalable to that level. And if you wanted to scale to that level, let's say you were interested in creating a civilization or perhaps a multiplanetary civilization that had those kind of levels, then you need to be able to generate and apply energy in a way that does not add tremendous amounts of heat into the system. So there is the idea of the Kardashev scale. So the Kardashev scale is a way to think about civilizations in terms of the total amount of power output that a civilization has. We are currently a type 0 civilization, so we don't even produce or harness as much energy as arrives to planet Earth from the sun, right? So that would be like you would get to type 1 if you had enough solar panels and that you were able to capture the amount of energy that hits the Earth, right? And we're currently like 1% of the way there. And so if you can imagine us trying to capture all that with the current way that we apply those things, how many coal plants can you do, right? Like that's a really bad idea. So I'm looking forward to future technology and energy, and fusion being forever 10 years away. 1 year it will not be 10 years away.
Yeah, it will be 20 years away.
It'll be 20 years away. Yes.
You need to hurry up with those metamaterials, man. We need some better stuff.
Calling all young material scientists.
Well, and I love that.
HICAM is taking fusion applications now.
Listen, I think we can write a grant application for that.
Let's do it.
Well, I love that we can, even in this room, just come up with ideas. Like there's people out there that are worried about some of these things, but you were saying interplanetary society. I mean, Elon's been working on that for a decade, right? And he's making lots of progress to that. Him and not only him, but obviously the people he supports, right? The teams,
Buzz Aldrin, I've never heard of him. Now Elon Musk, that's what it is to go to another planet.
That's great.
But just the technology and just the minds. You put your minds to something and you figure these things out. So love that.
Yeah.
Love the idea of just creativity and addressing these problems. Well, with that, I think we're good on time. So let me start.
Earth can sustain.
Earth can sustain. That's a great ending.
Yeah. We'll do on that. And just to close out on what you said there, we have these social media stories, right? And so Elon would be an example of somebody that has become a dominant figure in the imagination space of people. And what I wish for with my magic wand is for young people who are coming into prominence and into as they grow in their capabilities, for them to have that sense of hope and that sense that they can make a change and that they can make an outsized impact. And part of that is telling stories in media, and part of that is going out and living your life and you becoming the change that you want to see in the world.
I don't think anything else needs to be said. I think that was perfect.
Great.
Thanks for being with us.
Marcus.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Earth can sustain.
Earth can sustain.
And that's all for today's episode. Marcus Metzger leaves us with the reminder that life's dots may not always connect looking forward, but they always do in hindsight. Whether your passion lies in art, technology, or entrepreneurship, you have the power to create. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow, leave us a review, and share Uncharted with your network. Have a question or want to join us as a Gen Z contributor? Check out the show notes for details. Keep exploring, keep creating, and remember Marcus's wise words, Earth can sustain. Until next time, thanks for tuning in to Uncharted Your Sidekick for Life.